BJ from Board Game Gumbo Live here. I've got Edo from Pencil First Games and Gaming with Edo. Hey, speaking of Kickstarter, let's talk about Herbaceous Sprouts coming out on Kickstarter pretty soon.
Next Tuesday. It's what day? Today's Tuesday. 1 week from today.
One week from today. I've got a picture of some of the screenshots that you showed me off, before the show. Tell us about what we're looking at here. Herbaceous Sprouts. People know Herbaceous, but what's Sprouts all about?
Yeah, so Herbaceous was a card game for a Kickstarter from 2 years ago. It's been Pencil First Games' most successful game, albeit that's small compared to most publishers, but good for us. Herbaceous Sprouts is a totally new standalone game. From us, Herbaceous, if you've played, and I played it like the other night because some people wanted to play it, and the game, and everyone's going to have their own opinion, and obviously I like it because I was part of making it, but it has this fantastic, it's so simple, it's so beautiful, the dynamics come out and play, it's this really wonderful, simple thing. And so there was no interest on our part to like add to it in terms of just taking that game and like starting to add expansions. And it's sort of like, it's like no one sits there and says, hey, could we add anything to Rummy or Poker? Or I guess maybe people do, but like it's just like this, it's this wonderful card game. But we still wanted to come back. We love the look, we love the gardening, we love the feel, and we really wanted to make a dice game. And I was really excited about the idea of actually taking the dice game and actually making the dice using the sort of Star Wars Destiny color printing on the dice, so you could have dice that carried the beauty of the game. And so we started working with Steve. Steve's the designer on it. Beth was on board. We all
Dr. Steve Finn, right?
Dr. Steve Finn.
Sure.
For those who don't know, or we worked on Herbaceous, and then we wanted to make another game, and did Sunset of Water, and then we talked about doing another game, and thought about going back to.
We're getting the band back together.
Yeah, we like working together. But so this was, how can we just make a wonderful dice game that takes a lot of the concepts in Herbaceous, but turns them on their head and does something really fun and interesting and accessible with it. So we, instead of everyone potting into your own pots on your own garden, everyone's working on this main garden, and it's still push your luck. There's spots you're going for, and somebody can get it in front of you, but it's just an interesting twist on it. And then you're collecting dice and tool cards to manipulate your dice and make it happen. I mean, it's, from a weight perspective, it's closer to Sagrada in terms of dice game weight than it is Herbaceous. Plays in about 30 minutes, but because it leverages all these nice components and the themes layered through it, it's still a very accessible game. So I sort of look at Herbaceous and Sunset Over Water as this is a game journey for new players who enjoy board games. Like if you want to show your mom or your family or your spouse or whomever to play. I feel like what this line of games is doing is using accessible theme, beautiful, really nice production, and easy to understand gameplay to introduce people to fun games, right? So this is probably the best one we've done. It really is a fantastic game, and everyone will be able to agree or disagree when they get to play it. But I'm super excited.
There. It looks like it's a 4-player game, like Herbaceous was, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, 1 to 4. Keith Taka joined back in, and he's doing the solo play.
Keith from Role Player, right?
Yeah. He did the solo in Herbaceous and then Sunset, and then it's 2 to 4. It's the same age bracket. It's a little longer, whereas Herbaceous really can be played in 20 minutes. This one's 30.
I'm looking at those dice. Tell me about those dice. Somewhere I heard they're similar to the Star Wars Destiny dice.
Yeah, I didn't think to bring them up, but yeah. So what we're doing is doing the screen printing, 4-color, 4C screen, whatever it is, screen print on it, so that it is full color, gorgeous images, right? Yeah, and so we're because right now there's like the prototypes that people reviewed have stickers, but it's like part of it is for them to look really good, but it just it changes the dice game from looking at icons. They are icons in a way, but to looking at plants, and it's that extra level that makes it just accessible and approachable. And you're like, oh, I'm looking for lavender. I see 3 lavender. I don't see 3 lavender icons.
Right.
And that's part of what we try to do with this line, and so it's been it's been fun, and it's new. I've never done those types of dice. Talking about the USAopoly guys for a second, I was at Gamma, and I had gotten a quote on the dice. I didn't know anything about the process, and I was talking with Andrew Wolf, designer of Thanos Rising. Rising, I got it right. And he was like, "You should talk to my manufacturing guy, whose name was Paul, I think." And Paul is like the coolest person in the world, and I hope I got his name right. But he's been doing manufacturing. He runs their operations for their sourcing for the last like 20 years or something. He like goes to China 6 times, and he like sat down. And he's like, "Here's the process. Here's the machines. Wow. Here's the pricing. Here's what you should expect. Here's what you should be concerned about." And I was like, "You're awesome." So he took me through the whole thing, which I really appreciated. And again, it's cool to do new things and new components. And I don't know that many games that Yellow has done some games that I would consider more casual games with this sort of technique, but there aren't that many. So it'll be, but they're also, it's not cheap. So it's interesting. I mean, Herbaceous Sprouts comes with 30 dice. It is not, it's a dice game. Right. So hopefully it'll sit there within a lot of the dice games we've talked about, but we'll see when everyone else can have their opinions.
Ashley, I had a question for you. Keeping in the theme of the difference, you were talking about the difference between Herbaceous and Herbaceous Sprouts. How hard is it to play a game like Bang the Dice game and go back to playing the original Bang for you? Somebody that's going to play Herbaceous and Herbaceous Sprouts, will they be able to move back and forth between them? Do you have that problem once you're introduced to a game that has changed the variant? Does it totally replace the other?
It really depends on. I think there are some examples for some people that does that, but actually, in this case, I really think they complement each other. They really don't tread on the play of the other. They just like they came from the same garden, if you will. Like okay. They feel like they're related. You can understand like, oh, when he uses an icon for all the same set or all different, it's the same icon in both games. And they both have set collection. They both have push your luck, but they just sort of have a different vibe and delight to them. And I really do think they stand next to each other. One of the important things or interesting things is a lot of people think of dice games. This used to be called Herbaceous Dice, but I didn't call it Herbaceous Dice because it's not a simpler game. Like the only thing, if I wanted to make a simpler dice game than Herbaceous, it would have to basically be like Batman dice or Liar, like zombie dice, where you're just like
zombie dice.
You're rolling 3, trying to get sets and missing bombs. But who wants to the game's already been made, and it didn't feel right. So we just wanted to make a fantastic, accessible, wonderful dice game. So it's a level up. If you ever played Biblios, which sure. Herbaceous has a lot of sort of ties to. Biblios Dice isn't actually a smaller game than Biblios. Biblios Dice is actually like Biblios Euro, in a way, and it's a fantastic game, but it's heavier.
Sean mentions Race for the Galaxy versus Roll for the Galaxy. That's kind of similar to what you're describing, right?
Yeah, I think the people, a lot of times when you have a dice game and people are like, I'm never going to go back to the other one, perhaps they didn't really like the other one. Like perhaps they sort of like the other one and they love the new one and they just want to play the new one. Look, so there are people who love Herbaceous. There are people who like Herbaceous but say it's too light for me. I bring it out when I just want to have it as a filler, but it doesn't hit my table because it's too simple. Like I want a game that has more decisions. If you're that player, perhaps Herbaceous Sprouts will replace Herbaceous. Though you'll still have Herbaceous and you'll still pull it out when you have somebody over and you have 20 minutes to play, or you just want to just teach. They do complement each other. It isn't just like we took Herbaceous and we said we don't like Herbaceous and we want to make a better game than Herbaceous. It was more like we love Herbaceous and we love dice games. And we want to make a fantastic dice game that is related. And like, to me, I would always start by having somebody play Herbaceous and then be like, hey, now let's play Herbaceous Sprouts. Because they're both gateway games, but Herbaceous is like beyond gateway. Herbaceous is like if this player's only played a card game of Rummy or Hearts or Blackjack, it's just like if this player's really Canasta, only played card games,
Right.
You can just put Herbaceous down, explain it in like 3 minutes and play. That player probably would have a little bit of a leap. Not impossible, but they'd just be like, okay, I got dice, But if you've played Herbaceous, it's just like a walk right into Herbaceous Sprouts. So again, I think they're both stellar games. I mean, I enjoy playing them all the time.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo Live. I've got Edo from Gaming with Edo and Pencil First Games. The Herbaceous Sprouts Kickstarter starting this coming Tuesday. It's
Correct.
a different game. It's not an expansion. It's a different game. It's you've got a lot of descriptions in there. I think people need to check it out, and it'll be live Tuesday at noon.
No. Tuesday, 6 a.m. Pacific.
Wow, early in the morning.
If you wake up on Tuesday, it'll be there.
Oh, wow.
And for what it's worth, if you look up, if you just go to the Facebook/Herb Game, which is gives you Herbaceous and Herbaceous Sprouts. There's a lot of images there. If you're like super sneaky and you go to the Kickstarter tabletop Kickstarter group or one of the other groups, I've actually shared and posted the link to the preview page.
Okay.
We don't need to post it here, but again, if you're really like, I really want to know, you can go to one of those sites, and because that's part of the process of getting feedback for your Kickstarter.
Stretch goals for it?
Yeah, it's got a number of stretch goals, though actually a lot of those stretch goals are some component improvements and some other little things, but you know, nothing over the top. There's a mini expansion like we've done on all of our titles that is a Kickstarter exclusive, but
Dan wanted to know if that mini expansion for one of your games was still available. If Dan's still there.
Anybody who wants a mini expansion for any of the games, including Legendary Creatures, mind you, if you reach out during the Kickstarter, either as part, well, you can do it as part of your pledge or just pledge for just that. That's when they're open for business, is when there's a Kickstarter going. Yeah, so you can happy to get those sent out and hook people up with it. I've tried my best, for better or for worse, to keep those mini expansions that I've called Kickstarter exclusive to be truly Kickstarter exclusive. There's always asks and demands for it. With Heroes and Tricks, which is a campaign I recently contributed to and ran, we took a different route where we made a expansion, which is going to retail, but the Kickstarter backers got it for free. So it was just a big deal. But again, to stretch goals, Herbaceous Sprouts is just really where it wants to be. One of the interesting things was Herbaceous unlocked all these incredible stretch goals. It unlocked the solo mode. It unlocked team play. It unlocked a variant. Herbaceous Sprouts, it has a solo mode. It has team play. So it has all of those like things that we ended up unlocking in Herbaceous because we knew from the beginning we wanted it. And at the end of the day, it's a rule. A lot of them are rule sets. I mean, the solo mode has special cards and its own stuff that Keith did. But, you know, I don't know. We made a great game, and we're trying to make a Kickstarter campaign that's compelling. But at the same time, I don't like just chucking in new things for the sake of chucking in new things.
Interesting. BJ from Board Game Gumbo Live here. Edo from Gaming with Edo and Pencil First Games. Check out that Kickstarter for Herbaceous Sprouts on Tuesday. Dan says, I love the dice. The only Keltis and Bonanza versions he owns are the German-only dice games. That's different. The only Bonanza version he has is Bonanza, the dice game. So,
well, you know, and just there's a very interesting note there, which is you go back in time, the whole genesis of Herbaceous was Beth Sobel created an herb reskin print and play of Bonanza with art that basically appears in Herbaceous. And she didn't do all the Herbaceous art. She just did whatever Bonanza needed. And basically I saw it and I was like, what is this? Is it part of a game? And she was like, well, it's just this free PNP. And I was like, would you make it part of a game if I had a game to do it with? And she was like, you mean art like this? And I was like, no, literally that art with some more. And she said, sure. And we figured it out. I actually later found out that Daniel Salas had asked her at the same time as I did, or maybe a little after. But so perhaps I've never played the Bonanza dice game, but maybe we could go back and use some of the Herbaceous dice for it. But I don't know.
Jeremy, the Gang Meat Ninja, says your stretch goal philosophy, Edo, is dead on. So, hey, Jeremy, check this out next week, Tuesday, 6 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I I try to deliver Kickstarters on time. I actually have a pretty solid track record. And I think there are lots of people who do. People complain about the people who don't more. But
Sure.
part of that is understanding risk and thinking through it from the beginning.
And buffers. Good buffers.
Well, the buffer is a big trick. People sometimes are like, why is your date so far out? It's like, I just put a 3-month buffer on what I think is not even my best guess, like the sort of things might go wrong sort of standard. And then I'll just put 3 more months on it. The only campaign I've delivered late was my original with Liftoff. And it's sort of a story because Jamie Stegmeyer gave me tons of great advice. He was a real contributor to that campaign, but he, I had like May, and he's like, you should pull that into March. People are going to freak out if it's so far out. And I sort of felt like I was going to do it. And I ended up taking that advice, and he gave me like 15 pieces of advice. This is the only one that I think I should have done differently, but it was just a situation where I ended up coming in a month after or so, and I had communication. Everyone knew what was going on, but I don't think there's a big gain from saying you're going to be early. Like, I don't think it's a needle pusher to get that extra 2 months of like aggressive timeline. Just put a reasonable time and then deliver on it. I think that's worth more than being early, than saying you're going to deliver in 3 months or something.